Baby, lie is lie.
I'm not saying you're not pretty, but I love the long hair.
Well, I don't have long hair. I have short hair. What? Like you wish I would have had it on to go out.
Good.
But you know it's a wig, and I need to be natural sometimes. It's like you're embarrassed to be seen with me right now or something.
I'm not embarrassed, but
My hair needed to be washed and my head needs to air out, babe.
why didn't you stay inside when you're when it dries? You wear it on before coming out.
So you don't think I'm pretty without my wig?
The moment Daniel and Lisa looked at each other, the air wasn't just tense, it was electric with something heavier. Something that didn't exist before. Their private struggle suddenly didn't belong to them anymore. Fans online had already picked a side, family had whispered their verdicts, and friends were quietly taking notes, weighing in without mercy. Every glance felt amplified, every word edited in the minds of strangers. Daniel's jaw tightened as he realized that the story he thought he controlled was slipping through his fingers, vanishing into public opinion before he could even process it. Lisa's shoulders sagged, the confident armor she wore like a shield on camera cracking under invisible pressure. One comment, one post, one reaction online, and everything they had struggled to contain, every moment meant to stay behind closed doors, now had a life of its own. Their emotions were no longer private. They were public property. The intensity of it hit Daniel first. A sudden flare of defensiveness and guilt he hadn't expected. He wanted to respond, to clarify, to take back control. But the voices were already louder than his own. Lisa, on the other hand, felt a creeping isolation. The weight of judgment pressing down as if she were walking on a stage she hadn't agreed to perform on. The speed of it all stunned them. How quickly a single post could become a narrative everyone believed. How a simple reaction could twist the truth, making them feel as though their real selves no longer existed. And in that instant, both realized that what had started as a private fight had become a public spectacle. One they couldn't pause, edit, or rewind. Welcome to my channel, Reality Drama Files. I'm Lily, and today we're diving into the moment Daniel and Lisa's relationship started collapsing under the pressure of friends, family, and the relentless judgment of the internet. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below what you would have done if every private moment of your life was suddenly public. The shift was immediate. What Daniel thought was a minor miscommunication became a full-blown debate online. Friends texted their opinions like verdicts, and family calls came laced with subtle judgment. The truth became layered, distorted, and analyzed from every angle. Daniel felt his own reasoning twisting under the scrutiny, each thought echoing in a hall of mirrors where every reflection was a critique. Lisa's frustration built silently, her usual confidence unable to shield her from the sudden spotlight. She was no longer fighting for clarity with Daniel. She was fighting for space, for respect, for a chance to be seen as herself instead of a character in someone else's version of events. Every notification ping felt like a strike. Each comment like a verdict in a court she hadn't consented to. The emotional pressure was not gradual. It hit like a shockwave. What had started as a conversation between two people suddenly became a trial in the court of public opinion. Daniel's mind raced back to every moment he thought he had control. Each careful plan, each private joke, each intimate conversation now seemed like it had been staged for an audience he hadn't agreed to. The reality of being watched, judged, and dissected in real time made him question every instinct. Was he reacting to Lisa? Or to the crowd? Was the anger he felt truly his own? Or was it borrowed from the noise around him? Lisa noticed the subtle change in him, the clenched fists, the quiet tension, and it only heightened her own anxiety. The private sanctuary of their relationship had evaporated. The very walls that once held their trust and intimacy now felt like glass. showing their vulnerabilities to everyone, everywhere. Somewhere online, one viral comment was enough to ignite a frenzy. It didn't matter what Daniel or Lisa thought. They were already cast in a story not of their making. Friends, who had always offered advice, now became part of the echo chamber, their opinions bouncing back and forth like a relentless drumbeat. Family members, trying to protect or guide, inadvertently fueled the perception of chaos. Daniel and Lisa realized that controlling the narrative was impossible. Public judgment had arrived, fast, merciless, and unforgiving, and it was rewriting every memory, every intention, every action. Daniel's initial defensiveness slowly morphed into a quiet fear. Not fear of losing Lisa. It was fear of losing the story they had carefully curated. Fear of watching strangers define them in ways that didn't match reality. Lisa's energy waned as the emotional toll mounted, her confidence giving way to doubt. The weight of collective opinion pressed down harder than any argument between them ever could. One comment, one reaction, one thread, and the narrative had flipped. Suddenly, they were actors in a play directed by the public, and the script had been written overnight. The reality of it was undeniable. Their relationship was no longer just theirs. It had become a public performance, one in which even the smallest misstep could be magnified and misinterpreted. The intimacy and privacy they had relied on were gone, replaced by the gaze of an audience that demanded drama, allegiance, and resolution. Daniel and Lisa were left to navigate not just their own emotions, but the expectations, assumptions, and verdicts of a watching world that had already picked sides. What would you do if every private moment of your life was suddenly dissected and debated by the world? This is where Daniel and Lisa's story begins to show the real cost of social pressure and public scrutiny. The moment clips of Daniel and Lisa started circulating online, everything changed. Fans were fast to pick sides, dissecting every glance, every pause, every reaction. A 2-second silence became proof of guilt. A small smile spun into arrogance. Edits and sound bites amplified tensions, turning ordinary moments into evidence for the court of public opinion. Daniel scrolled through threads, each comment feeling heavier than the last, a constant reminder that the story he believed belonged to him was no longer private. Every judgment felt like a cage, every expectation another wall pressing in. He wanted to clarify, to explain, but the more he tried, the louder the noise became, leaving him trapped between what he felt and what the public demanded. Lisa experienced it differently. The online chatter wasn't just commentary. It was a magnifying glass over her insecurities. Friends and strangers alike seemed to see her flaws in extreme detail, and each reaction chipped away at the confidence she had worked so hard to maintain. Isolation wasn't about being alone. It was about feeling that every move was watched, every motive questioned, and every emotion judged. Daniel's defensiveness collided with her growing exhaustion, and the distance between them widened, not physically, but emotionally, shaped by an invisible audience with opinions louder than any conversation they could have had in private. Then came the first sign of family interference. A seemingly casual text or call carried weight far beyond its words, a subtle push or suggestion that made Daniel question not just Lisa, but his own responses. Public pressure was one thing, but when private relationships began to echo the judgment of strangers, the stakes multiplied. Their personal conflict was now colliding with everyone around them, layering tension on top of tension and setting the stage for emotional unraveling that neither of them could fully anticipate. How do you stay true to your feelings when everyone else is already scripting your story? Daniel and Lisa were about to find out. Friends began to step in, thinking they were offering guidance, support, or a lifeline. But what started as concern quickly turned into weight pressing on both Daniel and Lisa. Off-camera opinions began to carry more power than any conversation captured on screen. Every text, call, or casual comment from a friend was analyzed, debated, and internalized. Advice that was meant to help started feeling like judgment, and support slowly shifted into control. Daniel noticed himself listening more closely to voices outside their relationship, weighing their observations against his own instincts. Each opinion nudged him subtly, creating a sense that he had to justify his choices to more than just Lisa. Lisa noticed it too, but differently. The intrusion felt suffocating, an invisible crowd shaping expectations without ever sitting down to understand her perspective. Every suggestion from friends about what Daniel should do or how she should respond acted like a magnifying glass on her vulnerabilities. She began questioning whether her partner still saw her as she really was, or if he was starting to measure her through the lens of what others were telling him. Help had turned into pressure, and pressure was starting to erode the intimacy they once had. The shift was subtle, almost invisible at first. A laugh misinterpreted, a hesitation scrutinized, an opinion repeated too often. Suddenly, loyalty began to feel negotiable. Daniel's attention, once firmly on Lisa, started flickering toward outsiders who seemed to promise clarity or protection. The private foundation of trust they had relied on was under siege, not by lies or secrets, but by the voices of people who weren't in the room when it mattered most. When the people you trust start guiding your heart more than your partner does, whose side are you really on? Daniel and Lisa were about to discover the consequences. Family entered the mix, and suddenly, the stakes felt much higher. It wasn't just friends or fans anymore. These were people whose opinions carried history, shared memories, and the unspoken weight of expectations. Every comment from a relative wasn't casual advice. It felt like a verdict. Daniel began to feel the sharp edge of reputation fear, worried that every choice he made was being scrutinized not only online, but in family circles. Cultural and personal expectations compounded the pressure. Family pride, tradition, and the idea of doing the right thing became invisible chains around his decisions. For Lisa, family input was another storm she hadn't anticipated. Each suggestion or cautionary remark seemed to push her further from the center of the conversation. She began to feel sidelined, her voice drowned out by the chorus of opinions meant to guide, but instead creating distance. Guilt settled heavy on both sides. Daniel for feeling pressured, Lisa for feeling unheard. Decisions that should have been mutual began to feel like a negotiation under observation, with the family as the silent judge and jury. This wasn't just influence, it was a reshaping of the emotional terrain. Every argument, hesitation, or tear now carried double weight, amplified by relatives who unknowingly, or maybe intentionally, intensified the tension. What started as personal discomfort turned into urgency, a sense that immediate action was required to preserve honor, appearance, or familial approval. The intimacy they once relied on eroded under external judgment, leaving them both questioning not just each other, but themselves. When family opinions start dictating your heart, emotional distance creeps in quietly, but its impact is deafening. Daniel and Lisa were beginning to feel the first cracks. The online world became a pressure cooker. Every comment, every DM, every fan theory felt like evidence in an invisible trial. Daniel scrolled, paused, reread, and convinced himself he was seeing the truth unfold before his eyes. Confirmation bias crept in naturally. He interpreted every reaction as proof that his fears were valid, that Lisa's actions were not just surprising, but threatening to the relationship he thought he knew. Small clips and selective edits fueled the fire, and suddenly, every post seemed personal, as if the internet itself was judging him and validating his suspicions. Lisa experienced the opposite. Online narratives made her feel invisible, her side lost in a flood of opinions that often painted her as the antagonist. Every judgmental comment chipped away at her emotional safety, creating a sense of isolation even while she was surrounded by fans and family alike. Her reality was overwritten by fan-made stories, and each narrative twist online made it harder to assert her own voice. She wasn't just dealing with Daniel's reaction anymore. She was facing a crowd that decided her truth for her. The social media spiral accelerated confusion. Timelines blurred, events were reinterpreted, and both of them struggled to distinguish between reality and online perception. Daniel began listening more to the chorus of strangers and less to Lisa's own explanations. The subtle shift from private discussion to public spectacle was almost complete, and influence could now come from anywhere: friends, family, or faceless accounts online. When the world starts dictating your relationship, even reality itself can start to feel like someone else's story. Daniel and Lisa were now caught in a digital storm they couldn't step out of. Private doubt has a strange way of growing louder once it leaves the mind and lands in the ears of others. Daniel started to notice it. An offhand comment from a friend, a concerned family member, even a casual remark in a group chat. Each word echoed in his head, transforming his internal questions into near certainties. Fear, once private, hardened into something that felt like identity. Suddenly, being cautious wasn't just a choice. It became a shield, a definition of who he was in this moment of crisis. The shift from making decisions to defending oneself was subtle but relentless. Every suggestion, every opinion added pressure. Daniel found himself reacting, not reflecting. It wasn't about Lisa's hair or even the reveal anymore. It was about protecting himself from a storm of voices that seemed to demand he choose, judge, and act immediately. What started as private doubt had now become a public script, written by everyone except the people actually in the relationship. Lisa felt it differently, but just as sharply. Each external opinion, each online verdict, made her feel boxed out, forced to defend herself against a world that claimed to know her better than she knew herself. Her private thoughts and feelings were now constantly filtered through public expectations, stripping away clarity and amplifying exhaustion. Once doubt is voiced externally, it no longer belongs to you. It becomes a public fact, reshaping decisions and freezing emotions. Daniel and Lisa were no longer just in a relationship. They were on display, under pressure that no private talk could erase. The collapse didn't happen with a single explosion. It was quieter, almost invisible, but deafening in impact. Every decision Daniel made, every defensive move, carried the weight of public opinion. Lisa's responses were filtered through exhaustion and the constant pressure of judgment. Together, they were no longer a couple navigating challenges. They were two individuals under siege, reacting to the same storm in completely different ways. Earlier cracks in trust, the subtle withdrawals, the silent doubts, now became impossible to ignore. Moments once shrugged off or brushed aside suddenly felt like confirmation that the foundation had already weakened. Daniel, haunted by past betrayals and amplified by outside voices, pulled back further. Lisa, sensing both judgment and neglect, tried to maintain connection, but found herself alone in the fight to be seen and heard. The private became public, and private pain became a performance of survival. Each move they made wasn't just about each other anymore. It was about appearances, about defending identity under relentless scrutiny. Emotional intimacy eroded as fear, guilt, and reputation anxieties took the front seat. What remained wasn't love. It was a fragile attempt to manage how the world perceived them. This phase of collapse demonstrates how relationships in the spotlight can silently unravel long before any dramatic reveal, raising the question, are reality TV couples ever truly private? Or is every fight a performance waiting to be magnified? Everything boiled down to one moment, the hair reveal. But that was only the spark. The real fire was everywhere else. Friends, family, fans, social media, and cameras watching every move. Daniel's fear of judgment, Lisa's isolation, the constant pressure to perform. It wasn't just about looks. It was about emotional readiness, trust, and what happens when private struggles become public entertainment. Every reaction, every withdrawal, every defensiveness wasn't random. It was amplified by voices outside the relationship. Voices that transformed personal doubt into public narrative. Daniel wasn't simply leaving Lisa because of hair. He was responding to a storm that made him feel trapped, scrutinized, and cornered. Lisa wasn't simply rejected. She was battling a flood of external opinion while trying to maintain her own sense of identity and emotional safety. What's striking is that this isn't an isolated case. This is a pattern. Reality TV thrives on emotional pressure. The couples we watch aren't just navigating love. They're navigating an audience, editors, and public judgment that can tip every private conflict into public collapse. So, was Daniel protecting himself or rejecting the real Lisa? Was Lisa fighting for love or fighting to survive a public spectacle? The answer may depend on what you see and what you choose to believe. The story doesn't end here. There's another couple, another trust test, and another storm of public opinion ready to play out. And as always, Reality Drama Files will be there to unpack the next story, showing how these patterns repeat and why love under the spotlight often comes with a price no one sees until it's too late.